and welcome to the Yoga Ranger Studio. Today I'm going to take a really close look at one of my favorite yin poses, but a pose I understand is definitely not everybody's favorite yin pose. This is where we're going to take a look at saddle and half saddle. So most of you will know of it as yang class as Virasana or Supta Virasana. In yin, obviously we name it something else because we do. But I'm going to show you a lot of different modifications that you can take anytime you either practice with me or practice by yourself or practice in a class. You want to have variations that work for your body and what you would like to achieve. So we're going to take a look at a lot of different variations. We're going to start with a couple of things to try. 2 blocks, a bolster, and a rolled up hand towel. So hand towels are super helpful in a practice if you have any knee issues or ankle issues. So I'm going to start with this being our first show because I think a lot of people struggle with this pose because of the ankle. So if you can take this in that space in between the ankle and the foot, this will take some of the pressure off of the foot. So a lot of people feel a lot of pressure on the top of their foot, cannot fully flex their foot or, lengthen it out and point it. And it ends up being more of an angle, and that may be bone structure, that may be the shoes that you wear, the lifestyle you lead, it could be a million different things. But this is a way to take some of that pressure off. Now I always suggest when you practice this pose to put a blanket underneath just to keep a little bit more comfort on the top of the feet. Some people's feet are really delicate on top, and a huge amount of pressure into a floor for long periods of time is not comfortable. So here's your first suggestion. Just taking that rolled up towel. One of my favorite tips to give people in class, and you'll hear this in all of mine, I prompt for all of this, is if you're taking it, you're going to roll over to the side, take your thumb where the calf muscle is, you're going to pull it out and roll it back. This is going to move it out of the way a little bit and give you a little bit more space to come down in between your heels. Now, if coming down in between your heels, even after you roll that calf out, is not your friend, we have our other options. You can take a block. You can take 2 blocks. If your knees are really tender, you could take 3 blocks if you wanted to. You can tuck those heels on either side, keep them flat. This would be your version, and you can be upright and you're still getting a nice opening and stretch in the front of the quadriceps, activating the stomach and spleen meridians. It's still here. If you felt like you wanted more, you could come back onto your fingertips, more stretch around the knees. This is actually, weirdly, a really great pose for the knees because it's equal pressure in each of the ligaments on the inside and outside, and helps build a little bit more stability there. Now, if you were looking to kind of take your practice a different direction for deeper back bends, you could come all the way down. I would show that, but it's not my friend. You could drop down to 1 block and just keep your hips on it and lean all the way back. You might be able to do that. You could take the bolster underneath with the block underneath the hips. Now, if I'm taking it in a normal yin class, I would always suggest having something to prop you up. I don't think that holding it for a really long period of time flat on the floor is terribly comfortable, even if you have a lot of opening in your quadriceps. We look at this pose and we spend, 4 to 5 minutes in it. It gets really, really strong pose. If you like, you can take a half of this pose. Same thing, you can stack it up on 2 blocks, you can stay on the floor, either one, you have 1 leg out in front. Once again, you could start to lean back, you could come all the way down onto the bolster. Another option is to bend that knee when you come down. So taking myself off the block here, so I can show you exactly what this looks like. You can come all the way down. You could have a block underneath the head, and that's going to give you more lift, so you're upright more, and you're not going to stretch as much in the quadriceps. If you have more mobility, you can reach in and hug that knee into your chest. So if at first your knee lifts off the floor, that's okay. That's perfectly normal. As the tension releases in the hip flexors and the quadricep, the knee will start to drift closer to the floor. You don't need to force it down there. Just let gravity pull it down. In yin, we allow you to let that knee drift out really far. So if you find that your knees are more comfortable out at a bit of an angle, that's okay too. The joy of yin is that the rules are different. So in any of these poses, we have some additions to those. You can add some variations to try some different things. In this pose, instead of going back, you can go forward. This is going to stretch not only the quadricep, activate the stomach and spleen meridians, but it's going to activate the urinary bladder meridian running down the back of your body and help stretch your hamstrings. Great pose for the hamstrings. Great pose for really releasing a lot of tension in the back and hamstrings. Here too, you can take more variations. You can take that left hand over to the left, right hand up and over, and switch sides, a little lateral stretch. You can take a twist, one side or the other. You can take a lot of arm variations in this. So just showing you the leg variations, we'll take some arm variations. Sometimes it's nice to grab and wrap the arms around the shoulders. Sometimes it's nice to take the arms up overhead, grab opposite elbows or opposite hands or wrists. Or just take the arms out to the side. Now this really opens this pectoralis area, that's right front of the shoulder if you take your arms out because you're lifted up from the floor. Or you can take those hands alongside the hips. Sometimes it feels nice to just take your hands on the bottoms of your feet. You can give yourself a little foot massage. One of my favorites. Now coming out of this pose is a little bit difficult for a lot of people. I find sometimes if I just roll a little bit to one side, I can take one leg out. My preference is to come up, tuck the chin to the chest, press through one hand, stabilize and come all the way up. But if that isn't your friend, you can roll to one side, unfold the leg, and just take your legs out straight. So if you were in a single-legged version of it, you could roll over a little bit toward the right, take that leg out, let it release, and take a few breaths. If you're coming out of the double-legged version, you could take a counter pose. That's just leaning forward or lift, bring your toes together and come into child's pose. Great counter poses for this would be downward facing dog, cat-cow, child's pose, just sitting and straightening the legs out in front of you and just giving them a little rub down. Or taking a windshield wiper. Helps kind of loosen those hip flexors. There's a lot of fun variations for you to try in this practice. If you are someone who is not comfortable with the foot flipped over, some people in my classes have found they like it flipped out. I have a couple of people with a really deep rotation of the hip. This is more comfortable for them. It's okay for me, but it's not my preference. Some people find that they feel better keeping that foot tucked underneath all the way and coming down. I don't find that to be true because I kind of find the heel digs into me, but if that's comfortable for you and you don't like to have that knee rotated in a little bit, then you can always stay up on the hip and come all the way down. I would say for this, a block would be your best friend because it gives you the space to come down with your foot right underneath your heel, under your hip. If none of these are an alternative that works for you and your knee is not liking this pose at all, there are some really great alternatives that work just as well. You can use a bolster or blocks. One of my favorite is to stack 2 blocks on top of each other. So come down onto your back. The bolster doesn't want to get out of my way. Lift your hips, stack those blocks underneath in a bridge pose, and walk those feet out however far you think you want to. If you can take the heels to the floor, toes pointing up. Really great stretch, stomach and spleen meridians, a little bit of activity in the urinary bladder lines again. Great alternative to this. And then even gives you a little bit of an inversion. You can already feel this stretching out. You can always take one leg at a time or both legs. I hope this gives you a bunch of alternatives to take when saddle or half saddle is not necessarily working for you. Some days this pose will work for you, some days it won't. Some days I feel the double kneed flip is great, and some days I really want that single leg half saddle version. It just feels better for me. There are days when I feel I want to pull the knee in a little closer and days when I want it straight. So play around with this. If I cue it in a class, don't feel that you are compelled to do it exactly the way I'm doing it. You're still getting a lot of the same benefits, same meridians we focus on there. Take the one that works for you and for your body. I hope this helped. If it did, go and give it a thumbs up down below. Comment and let me know if you'd like to see more of these kind of yin tutorial alternatives. I want to offer some of the harder yin practices, some of the harder yin poses that people struggle with because of knees and discomfort and pressure, and offer some alternatives to those poses to help you out, help you get more out of your yin practice. So if you're not a subscriber, please join us and subscribe. Click that subscribe button down to my left, your right. And I hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.